All right, hi everyone. Welcome to DIGG Dojo. This is our new location. I think it's easier than using this outside app. We figured out a way on our UMA call last week, figured out a way to record these. So I figure it's better to meet somewhere where we're already hanging out rather than an additional app. But feel free to let us know what you think. If this is better or worse. Any thoughts on the venue? So got a lot going on this week, a lot to talk about. We've got, I don't know if you saw the article that dropped over the weekend about the DIGG Oracle upgrade, where we went away from the Chainlink Oracle and back to the Badger home-rolled Oracle that was in place when we launched. So if you are interested in those details, check that out. If we want to chat today about kind of next steps for the Oracle, I think there's a long discussion to be had on that. But I think we want to devote the meat of today to is this new proposal from Weezik and Mason that is quite comprehensive for different areas of DIGG. So it includes incentivizing new LPs to move over from Uniswap v2 to concentrate in SushiSwap, and a nice APY boost to kind of kickstart that move. Then also topping off the DIGG KPI options pool, the reward pool for that, and then also a proposal for doing treasury controlled liquidity. So that would really supercharge the liquidity around DIGG, which would involve putting some WBTC and DIGG from the main battery in there. So I know that's had quite a lot of discussion, and there's a lot of nuances on how we go about that. So I don't know, Weezik, do you want to kick us off and kind of give us the high level overview of this discussion, and we can get into the kind of most salient discussion points here and take it from there. I know Mason, you're on here too, so if you want to raise your hand, we can get you up here. I know you were spearheading the treasury controlled liquidity portion of this, so it would be great to hear from you also.
Yeah, it makes sense. And also we have, we'll see what happens. We have, I think, 3 days left to unlock rewards. And, again, if we don't unlock any rewards, or if any unused rewards would roll over to the next rebasing event, which would start, I believe, August 1st, so basically immediately after. And to give some credit here, Poe, huge help on this. This is my first BIP. I've done a couple other things when we launched the KPI options, but lots of support here from Poe and Mason. So, yeah, I think I don't want to go through the entire BIP word for word. I'll invite everybody to please read it and vote. It obviously still needs to go to Snapshot, but the core mission behind it was kind of started with how can we help create deeper and more concentrated liquidity for DIGG. We kind of checked everything out with the new Oracle and the rebasing mechanisms and confirmed it really made no sense to keep our liquidity across Sushi and Uniswap. Additionally, Sushi provides a performance fee, so it kind of began with the idea of just hey, let's migrate emissions from Uniswap to Sushi. It increases revenue for Badger via the performance fee. It creates one deeper and more concentrated liquidity pool for DIGG, and we can also incentivize the emission schedule to provide a short-term boost that would increase the APY as well. Not to mention just consolidating the emissions will provide a short-term boost until it's normalized. So this is kind of the initial thought here. Furthermore, it also allows us to start thinking about more capital efficient forms of liquidity. So, we've got Uniswap v3, we've got Sushi Trident. All these are kind of the new arenas that we want to play in. And for rebasing tokens, it's going to require a lot of thought. And so this was the initial kind of start of this BIP, was let's consolidate emissions, let's move withdrawal fees, let's provide a short-term boost, and at the same time create deeper, more concentrated liquidity and hopefully bring in some new buyers through the increased APY. And then what happened is we started thinking about it in terms of percent of DIGG supply as a whole, what the treasury holds, and when thinking about it, what's the most capital efficient way to use DIGG rewards in terms of emissions. And so in fairness, initially the short-term APY boost was a little bit higher than 2% of total DIGG supply, but then we started thinking about let's actually just fund options, which is a much more efficient way to emit DIGG because it actually comes with positive rebases than just emitting DIGG with no actions happening. So that got pulled into it, and it was okay, well, it's kind of a it's kind of a two-punch way of emitting DIGG. One, much more marketable than the other APYs. Two, it gives us a chance to continue allowing options to grow and funding it. The initial allocation of DIGG from 2-3 months ago to KPI options has decreased about 70% through negative rebasing. So allocating another 4% to that is like a 66% boost in terms of where it is today. And it just gives us the ability to continue to educate the market on how options can be a really efficient manner to emit rewards versus just an APY. So points 1 and 2 are kind of like very closely tied together. And then point 3, I really want to give more credit to Mason and Poe on this. They just started, and I'll let Mason maybe speak to this a little bit, and Poe, you're welcome to as well if you want. But the idea of creating treasury controlled liquidity really just came from the standpoint of right now, if there was ever a time to provide liquidity, it's going to be when DIGG is under peg and we've gone through 90% plus market contraction in terms of market cap. And so it really allows us to create liquidity that will scale with really utilizing BTC in an efficient manner. And there's some limitations in there in terms of like if DIGG were to spike in price between execution or between voting and execution. If it goes above a certain threshold, it might have to go to a council to vote. But the reality is injecting or establishing treasury controlled liquidity is really a prudent investment right now, both for helping create more concentrated liquidity and have kind of a permanent whale, but also just in terms of prudent financial investment for the DAO in terms of diversification of assets and reinvesting in itself. So anyways, I'll pause there. Mason, I'm going to let you take over. You probably can speak much more articulate to this than I can.
Yeah, it's a good introduction. Yeah, like Wes said, DIGG is quite a small market cap at this point. The Treasury has a good number of BTCs. We kind of were examining the situation and, especially looked at, I think last week, we were sitting at peg pretty decently and then we dipped below. And I looked at it and I saw that it was two $20,000 sells. And so that kind of was part of the impetus for Wes and I just discussing, well, how can we create more liquidity? How can we make it so that, sells and buys don't move the market as much? And the treasury controlled liquidity or protocol controlled value, or however you want to call it, stood out as a good way to, at this point when DIGG is so small, to, dedicate a small portion of treasury assets there, increase that liquidity. And then also the effect of that is that the protocol becomes a net buyer. And what we're kind of trying to move towards is the idea of DIGG actually almost owning its own liquidity and creating that positive flywheel. We've seen protocols like Fei and Ohm that are attempting to not peg an asset, but to, have backed assets. And so we kind of started to try and shift our thinking around, well, can we stop trying to focus so much on the peg? Well, it is still important, but can we focus on really having it be backed and having DIGG essentially be like almost like a leading indicator of interest in DeFi? So I think the idea with this initial TCL is to make sure that we have deep liquidity for WBTC DIGG. And then, if this program is successful and we're able to get this flywheel going, we can examine, other forms of liquidity. Maybe that's IBBTC, or maybe that's other types of Bitcoin, and us trying to control as much liquidity as possible, being that benevolent whale, and really just continuing to build DIGG into something that has real utility. Is there anything else, Wes, that you kind of other thoughts that anything else you wanted me to mention? Or
not at this moment. I appreciate that, Mason. I guess one other point just to bring up is we have a few days left of options. The additional options being funded would apply to the next rebasing event, and it wouldn't increase the actual option count. So the option count has been predetermined, and so it's just basically going to increase the value of everybody's options. Again, if you hold from event to event, you also have a multiplier applied. So this next rebasing event is going to basically increase everybody's positions substantially for those that hold, and also bring for buy-in. But maybe, I would, if there's any questions, I don't know if there's a text channel. Let me see.
Yeah, Dig
Would
Dojo
love just to kind
discussion.
of open this up. Okay, cool. Yeah, let me look at this. So, any questions from anyone? Feel free to raise your hand. I'm looking through it right now. I'm just slow.
So on Friday I joined the office hours call and gave a little summary of the proposal on that call. And one of the points that Spada made, I mean, he just is keen to be aware of like the risks and benefits of doing the treasury controlled liquidity. And like, there's a case where if we do it and DIGG is way under peg and then it shoots over peg, then the treasury is going to end up with a lot more WBTC. Obviously, if DIGG goes the other direction, then it's going to be putting a lot more DIGG, and it already has quite a bit of DIGG. So, like, what do you guys think about the different kind of like risk reward scenarios? Because I think like generally how this plays out is you really need to have a view on what the market's going to do in the next 6 months or a year, right? So, like, how do we think about that? What are the different kind of risk reward scenarios that we think are likely here?
So I think it's hard to market speculate. I mean, I would actually argue that if you're making a reinvestment back into yourself, you almost have to do it, completely separate from what you think the market will do to some degree. Like that, if that's the case, then like, it's not probably the right decision to make. Period. I think, irregardless of market decision or market dynamics right now, this still is a good investment back into yourself when looking at the fact that DIGG did not, or when you're looking at the current price of DIGG being below peg, as well as just being so far market cap. And additionally, generally speaking, what DIGG lacks is BTC, right? Like BTC is what DIGG lacks at the moment. So irregardless of market dynamics, if we can generate more BTC, then that's a positive. The downside risk, as you said, yeah, there is downside risk as well. I think the basis for the decision of now is that having the 3+ months of negative contraction, 90% off market cap, and being below peg, it helps limit that downside risk. Again, we believe there's more of an upside opportunity versus a downside risk at the moment to generate more BTC. So BTC's price may go up or down. The idea is that we believe this will generate more BTC, and that's the main point here. And more BTC helps DIGG stabilize and gives the treasury a way to, as Mason said, think of future opportunities. And going forward, if this drains a lot more BTC, then it's another probably proposal or BIP that we would want to think about what to do with it. Again, like Stability Vault has been launched, or it works, but if it doesn't have a lot of BTC to kind of help support downside buying, then it's really just a one-sided vault. So again, generating more BTC is kind of the general goal here in the short term.
Yeah, I guess the flip side of it is, DIGG is at the smallest it's ever been. That means it's the easiest it's ever going to be, or it ever has been, for Badger to come in and provide a lot of liquidity. And really, like, if we have a strong view that that's going to help stabilize it around peg, then it's probably like, one interpretation is that this could be like the best time ever to do that, right? So I think that's also something to keep in mind here.
Yeah, I think to that point, like I said, like the market cap's pretty low, and to your point about the idea of if DIGG goes up quite a bit, we're selling DIGG to buy WBTC. If we want DIGG to be a pegged asset, and we want it to mirror the price, that's actually positive, right? Like, technically the best thing would be hoping that it could go over peg, and then quantitatively selling the further it gets over peg, stacking the WBTC so that the moment it goes the other side, it does the opposite. And from my understanding, the Stability will be able to do that. The thing with it is that the value accrual there is going to be very slow. So the idea is just kind of bootstrap that initial liquidity. And I think at the end of the day, like the fact that if we have that liquidity down and DIGG is, going down, that we're a net buyer. I mean, like, to me, that shows that we should actually aim to have as much liquidity, owned by the DIGG treasury as possible, right? Because anytime there's contraction, then it's, the Dow just keeps earning or owning more and more.
Yeah, when we looked at the TCL positions, we denominated it in terms of DIGG. So if you if you kind of do back of the envelope math right here, there's about 40%, or the Treasury owns about 20% of DIGG supply right now. And if you subtract the increase in emissions and options, that leaves about 22% of total DIGG is controlled by the Treasury today. So the options look at basically allocating 5, 10, 15, 20% of that DIGG Treasury to liquidity, which would require a commensurate BTC amount. And to Mason's point, like I will tell you, like I would make an argument that we should commit as much as we can that the community is open for. But that's the beauty of the DAO. Like whatever the community thinks is the right amount, we can go with, including none, which is an option. Like right, like we provide zero liquidity. So right now the options on there, you know, are 20, 15, 10, and 5, and just doing nothing at all. But if you look at the examples provided in there, I tried to update them based on the most current ratio as of yesterday, which I think is like 86% or 87% BTC. But if done now, obviously BTC is a little bit cheaper than DIGG, and it would provide the various options up to, you know, almost the entire treasury. So that's the way to think about those 4 options of 5, 10, 15, 20%. They're relative to percentage of total DIGG supply, and in terms of total treasury of DIGG, it comes to about 22%. Once the other, assuming votes 1 and 2 passed, it would come to about 22%. So just a little bit of context there.
What about in terms of the overall BTC supply in the treasury? How much, if we go 20%, how much of Badger's BTC is that?
So I looked at everything in terms of DIGG. So obviously, if we provide liquidity, it's part DIGG, part BTC. And so I calculated how much BTC would be required. But just in terms of DIGG treasury, just looking at how much of that treasury do we want to allocate to liquidity, and then how much more BTC are we willing to commit. Mason could probably speak more on that, whether we have the BTC or whether we have to buy the BTC. I don't want to speak too much to that, but we actually would have the assets to do it. It would just require us to put that BTC in. That would be the other side of the liquidity position.
Yeah, and we have enough WBTCs to be able to cover that. So outside of even the Bitcoin in the BIP 65 that was proposed to just be put to work and earning convex, yeah, we have enough WBTC, so there should be no extra considerations that need to be made there.
I think the DIGG is the lower end of what we have, so that's the reason why the positions were based on how much DIGG we have in treasury.
So Poe is writing here in the comments, the risk reward looks asymmetrical to me. The treasury controlled liquidity can support a large percentage of DIGG liquidity, up to 20% for the proposal. So if there's 40% of the DIGG market cap in TCL and we're incentivized, the downside becomes much more limited. So Poe, does that mean you think that you would kind of swing towards the bigger end of the spectrum, like if we can get that 20%, like that's going to be, I don't know. I mean, I'm having trouble kind of like matching these different options, the 5 to 20%, in terms of like how much of a stabilizing effect will they have? I guess that's a bit tricky to calculate, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Poe said it best. This is a very calculated asymmetrical bet. I mean, I can go to a casino and throw some money on a roulette table, and that's an asymmetrical bet. This is a very calculated and strategic asymmetrical bet. Like the ability for the treasury to control its liquidity at a point when DIGG is gone the absolute lowest and is below peg is a very cost-efficient way to generate more BTC. I mean, I think that's the best way. So the question, I think what Poe's saying is just how much of that do we want to do? Like, I don't want to speak for Poe, but I think based on this, he's saying like essentially like, hey, like if the community's okay doing 20%, it's a good bet to make right now, right? Like they kind of say like when you, I forget the guy who said it, but it's kind of like when you bet big kind of thing if you believe or have conviction in your bet. But that's kind of the position I think that establishing the TCL is in right now, is that there's been a lot of consideration thought. It seems it would be very prudent at this point to do it. But again, we want to put it to the vote with the community and make sure that whatever is decided is the community's decision. Again, we just think that the upside is a bigger opportunity than the downside risk at the moment.
Yeah, I think further to that point, essentially we have a known downside and we have an unknown upside. And just with the size of the market cap where it is, that cap downside, I think, is just essentially like a cost of doing business. We believe we can get the DIGG flywheel really moving, and it is that known downside. So I think, yeah, it is a very, very asymmetrical bet. Providing deeper liquidity is just going to make sure that a $20,000 sell can't move the market 8%. It'll be some smaller amount. So yeah, and then obviously the benefit from if DIGG does start to expand, will be a lot more WBTCs. We can make further decisions about, do we leave those positions intact, or do we use some of that WBTC in the stability vault, or maybe we find a way and bring further assets in. But yeah, overall, I think that known downside and with that kind of unlimited upside type thing it's a very good bet to be making.
And again, this is just, I think the other point to make, just kind of getting out of the weeds a little bit and moving to like the 40,000 view here of DIGG, is that this is a very multifaceted approach. It's not like TCL is the right thing alone. This is, we haven't talked about it, but Wasabi basically provided an entire article on like every ounce of the rebasing mechanics, why we changed, what the next step is, and so it's just like there's a ton of work going into this, and it's really the collective view of everything, like trying to be disgustingly transparent with DIGG, trying to increase new LP positions by providing strategic emissions, nothing overboard, but revising things to provide an incentive in the next couple of months, while continuing to provide more funds to options, educate the market on how that works. Again, we're about to go through our first rebasing event. Whether we unlock rewards or not, a lot of the rewards are going to roll over to the next event, plus potentially a huge increase. And if people are holding, it's just going to continue to encourage people to hold through getting increased positions plus multipliers and continuing to bring in new buyers. And so I think these, in conjunction with TCL, in conjunction with trying to build a roadmap, and there's even just the aspect of like the Badger DAO reinvesting in itself in DIGG, and the conviction that brings, we think that collectively all these things are very positive enhancements to make, and hence the reason we put the BIP out last night.
Who wants to jump on and ask a question or make a comment about this? We got 51 people here. That's great.
I know not everybody agrees with what we're doing, so if you have differing opinions,
yeah,
if everybody here agrees, great, that's awesome. But the spirit of this is actually I've talked to a lot of people who have differing opinions of me, and that makes us stronger. So if people have concerns, questions, like, let's talk about them. This is the opportunity.
Yeah, the other, again, if you want to talk, raise your hand, press the little request to speak button, and we'll get you up. But the other thread of discussion that I saw in the chat here was about, do we place any upside or downside triggers on this? Like, you could say, if it expands a certain amount, the treasury will pull, or if it contracts a certain amount, it will pull. And Mason made the comment that this is primarily like a psychological, like doubling down, showing commitment, and to put those kind of guardrails might weaken that to some extent. I kind of agree. I think we still have the council governance processes that will be in place. So if like something unforeseen happens, we still have all the tools to kind of cross that bridge when we get there. So I'm not sure we necessarily need to add the guardrails or the triggers to the current BIP. That's my initial thought, at least. Prince Talk. Hey, William, are you able to get Prince Talk up here? I don't. Looks like I don't have the ability to invite him up.
Yep, just invited him up.
All right. So Prince Talk, if you click accept, there you go.
There he goes.
Sorry, I've never done this before. I just wanted to add my voice to support. I think one of the things that I think is probably most frustrating for everyone is a fairly significant treasury that's not being put to work. So I'm, pro positive any proposal that is looking to put the treasury to work. And I think in this case, we have really focused on, I liked your comment earlier, we know the downside, we can mitigate the total risk, but the positive upside is being unknown, but there's a pathway towards that. So I think it's just a great idea to continue to be focused on making our assets that are in the treasury to be usable and providing value to the protocol broadly. So just wanted to say that again, I'm in support of the proposal.
I think Brent's talked. Yeah, no, I mean, there's been a lot of, I mean, right now, the last 4 months, I feel like has just been a whirlwind of lots of work across core team and community with DIGG. It's really exciting, and obviously, I'm biased, but I do think this BIP has been incredibly well thought out in terms of not just by myself. It's not something I was able to just not all from the mind of Weezik. It's really been a collective effort, and Mason, Poe, Jonto, myself, all kind of contributing, plus just community offering feedback, whether you realize it or not, is all going into this. And we really wanted to create a BIP that was not focused on one thing more than the other, and really try to use the best, the resources as efficiently as possible when considering what the short-term, long-term opportunity was. So, yeah, I appreciate your comment, Prince Talk.
Let's say, looking at this forum post, we've got, I think, 10 voters, and we've got 50 people in here. So get your butts over there and register for the forum and vote and make your voice heard on this stuff. I mean, this is like, especially if you really support it, if you look at the Discord chat, there's been some quite spirited discussion. So, this is the mechanism. So I don't know, can someone who knows the governance stuff, like what's the minimum votes that needs to go? The snapshot, I should know this, and I know there's a big governance proposal that's coming out, but what is the exact how a bill becomes a law roadmap from this stage that we're at now?
It's 50. We have to hit 50.
50. Yeah. So if everyone on this call goes over and votes, we can hit it right now.
Yeah, thanks Wasabi for posting that too. Yeah, we, vote, comment. 1500 Badger did make a comment a second ago, and I want to go back to it because I actually think it'd be good to discuss just in terms of, let's just say whatever option we decide, 5, 10, 15, 20% is passed. What are the mechanics, Mason or Poe? I don't know if either of you can answer this, of actual making the buy. Is it going to be something that would be like 75, 50% allocated to buy today, and then another percent held? Would it all just be a one-time buy? Would it be kind of like almost an announcement of a strategic buy plan over the course of a period? Like, probably makes sense to discuss that, not to get too far down the road, but assuming if we do pass some percent, that would be good to think strategically about that. Would love to get your thoughts.
I think generally it makes sense to do it over a shorter time period. I don't know that a year makes sense in terms of what we're trying to do, because the ultimate goal is provide a slight boost on emissions, get things over to sushi fully, implement the treasury controlled liquidity, and then start reducing reward APY, and eventually get to the place where we don't pay a reward APY for liquidity provision, and instead are able to provide, deep liquidity as a matter of the protocol, and as a matter of assets owned by DIGG Treasury. Just trying to look at market depth really quick.
Makes sense. I think a year would be way too long. I wasn't sure if that's what 1500 Badger meant, but just yeah, whether if it was going to be. So it sounds like it would just be a pretty quick move that wouldn't be spread out. Any other?
See, we have.
Go ahead.
I see we have Spada in the audience. I know you were, Spada, sounding kind of a note of caution on Friday on the call about the use of treasury resources. So I don't know if you're in a place where you can pop up and weigh in on this. Anyone else want to comment? Again, just raise your hand and we'll invite you up and get you on stage here.
Any questions on anything else? I mean, we have the time, we have the audience, we have a lot of people here. Just in terms of current rebase mining, getting ready to kickstart and start a new event, what that means, Oracle questions. Again, Wasabi published the article a few days ago, really well done, that kind of memorialized all of the actions taken over the last two months or so that kind of led us to a point of transitioning back to the original Oracle, and also kind of what our next steps look like as we move forward. So lots of good perspectives here. Happy to go in any direction that the community thinks would be beneficial. I like your enthusiasm, Pipes, in the discussion.
If we want to talk about the Oracle, I can tee us up with like a quick recap of that. So, as you know, mid-July we switched back to the Badger Oracle and away from Chainlink, because Chainlink Oracle was designed to include data from centralized exchanges, but it was really weighting these extremely low liquidity centralized exchanges, and that was where the price was quite low, but there was extremely low liquidity at those levels. So that's the way Chainlink's Oracle works, and it didn't seem feasible for them to change it. So we just said, okay, we're going to go back to the Badger Sushi Uni Oracle. And the the advantage of that is that most of the training is happening in these two places. That's where we're incentivizing liquidity. So it makes sense to look at those. The downside is that if DIGG goes over peg and it starts getting traded more around DeFi centralized, it's would take more dev work to add those places, right? And you want to have something that's flexible and can add new data sources as they become relevant. Right now, it would take dev work and take resources to do that. And then the other downside is just that it's a Badger product that's governing a Badger product. So like ideally you want to have something that's that's from a third party that has that element of neutrality. From everything I've talking to the devs and everything, people are very concerned with making sure that it's accurate and getting the right data. Like I don't think there's anything to question about the current Oracle, but it's just like better to have. That's why places like Chainlink and UMA exist, right? So they can be that trusted outsider providing the price data rather than something not decentralized. So I would love to hear people's thoughts on what kind of the next steps for the Oracle are. So we've been talking with UMA. They have the optimistic Oracle, which I understand it looks at the price every second. So the current Oracle takes a snapshot every hour over a 24-hour period, whereas the UMA one is taking snapshots every second. So it's getting a smoother time-weighted price. And so, for example, like if there was to be like a market crash or like a spike, if it's constantly taking readings, it's going to incorporate that more smoothly rather than just every hour. It would incorporate that data faster. And someone was just reaching out to me on Twitter today. There's another Oracle solution that I guess is just getting started up, and we're interested in chatting. I'd love to hear people's thoughts on the Oracle. Are we happy with the current design? What are people's priorities for the next steps in terms of Oracle development? See, is Hash Error here? I know Hash was talking with the UMA people extensively. He might have hopped off. I thought I saw him on here earlier.
Ultimately, it's trying to increase. It's trying to get back to Chainlink, right? Like that's kind of the standard in terms of third-party oracles. And so I think by focusing on things that's going to bring more market buyers in, increasing liquidity, growing DIGG, this is just for everybody on this call. Like I know we've been doing the dojo for a couple months now. This is a very iterative approach. Like this isn't the end. This is just the beginning, in my opinion. I don't mean to sound all cryptic or something, but like moving to sushi allows us to put bounties out there and think about evolving DIGG across other teams. We want to figure out how to create capital efficient liquidity. I believe there's a way we can do it on Uni V3. I want to figure out how to do it on Trident. We want to figure out how to go out and use DIGG across different protocols. I think Jonathan just put a BIP out. I think it was BIP 63 or something. I can't remember the name. We're talking about using DIGG as collateral on Rari. I mean, there's just like the idea is mostly around trying to, I think, two things: take advantage of the fact that DIGG is at its lowest point ever, and so how can we like inject liquidity to help bring in new buyers, but also how can we take a moment to establish a TCL at the most cost-efficient time ever, right? Like in terms of asymmetrical bets, like I think my standard for asymmetrical bets is kind of ample. So it's a pretty, the downside is known. The upside is opportunistic is probably an understatement. The upside is very huge. And so taking a moment to do that is prudent. What level of risk the community is willing to take is another discussion, but giving the community an opportunity to take advantage and use our assets to make a financial kind of reinvestment at this point is a prudent strategy, in my opinion. And then just continuing on, this is options are continuing to run. We want to get more to a steady state where options are utilized to help incentivize, and then, as Mason said, eventually move to even more efficient methods for emissions. And so this is kind of just the beginning, but happy to discuss any other questions as well. What should we do next? Are there other places to think about with DIGG or other directions we could go?
There's a question in the chat about GDIGG. I had the same question when I saw it. It seems like Genesis DIGG is the DIGG. So originally 3,000 DIGG were created. Some of those are still in the Badger treasury. All of that DIGG, 4,000, you're right, Poe. And then, so has shrunk as DIGG's market cap has shrunk. So Genesis DIGG is just the denominator of 4,000. So however many DIGG are left over that 4,000. So it'd still be like if you owned that a fraction of that market cap. So you could look at it as a fraction of 1/4,000th of the total fully diluted market cap of DIGG at any given time. That's GDIGG. But I think that's kind of an artifact of the way Badger has planned emission. So you'll see that on like these emissions proposals and spreadsheets, which is just a way to use constant labels for the assets.
There's no further questions. I don't want anybody to feel obligated to stay. I would just say, Vipes mentioned this in the chat, and just wanted to kind of reiterate. But as we, we're trying to kickstart a lot of ideas. Wasabi, myself, Mason, William, a lot of people in the community here, Hashair, Poe, generate discussion, 1500 Badger, Vipes, to get things going. But 100%, like, if this is something, you believe in or want to go out there and support, like, I think a big part of this next phase is going to be kind of the I don't know if you call it Twitter marketing or whatever it is, but kind of going out and kind of spreading the news. I think I'm very excited about what I think DIGG has to offer in the coming months. And I think right now, as the market is kind of going through, there's not a lot of conflicting stories out there. Like, I mean, DIGG has an opportunity to not only make a lot of news, but I think take up a lot of air because there's not a lot of things right now going on. So, anyways, just throwing that appeal, I guess, kind of piggybacking on what Vipes mentioned. It's, a lot of it's going to come down to marketing and spreading the news and talking about DIGG. And I think that's what this group of people on this call can do better than anyone.
Well, I don't see any of their hands up. I'm happy to wrap this up here, unless there's any other final thoughts or questions.
Yeah.
So again, I mean, we scared Spada off. I think he unjoined the call, but again, we got over 50 people here, and there's still not 50 votes on the proposal. I know I was kind of expecting this to be more contentious on the call today, given like the discussion that's been going on. But I would just encourage everyone to go chat in the Discord, make your voice heard, go vote. If you think there needs to be these other parameters like the scaling in, scaling out, or the triggers on the upside or downside, definitely voice those in the Discord. But certainly, when you made a decision, hope we can at least get 50 votes and move this on to the next stage.
Yeah, agree. Good, bad, or ugly, we want your vote. Again, this is not about trying to only get people that agree with us. We want, like, I've really tried to, I think everybody here has been very open to differing opinions. We want to try to figure out what's the best way, and this is the best way we're going to do that, is to create a very inclusionary environment around DIGG. So vote, comment, we want your feedback. If we get to 50 votes and we can pass this, great. But if we don't, then that means the community probably felt differently. So, I obviously believe strongly in it, but I also believe more strong. I believe that the community is the right. We should follow the kind of what the group wants to do. So I think go vote, give us your feedback, talk to us, DM me if you want to chat more about this. Wasabi, Mason, myself, anyone here, William. But thanks again for everybody joining.
Thanks, everyone. I'm not sure. I don't see Tom's OX here for a PO app. I know got some questions about that. So I'm going to DM him, and I will post a update in the DIGG thread on the main Discord when I figure out what's going on with that. But thanks, everyone, for coming.
Sorry, I'll poke in here. Yeah, I'll distro the PO apps today. So all good here. People can just send me a DM.
Oh,
Okay,
actually,
awesome.
Real quick, just want to offer a shout out one last time. Mason and Poe, just really helpful. I think Mason just thinking about some things from a financial perspective, going through this BIP. It was my first BIP. And then Poe, just tremendously helpful as a fairly new DeFi user, navigating some other questions. And so just wanted to offer my kudos to that. Wherever this BIP goes, just wanted to say thanks to both of you.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone, for coming. Go vote, comment, DM William for PO app. And it looks like people are happy with this channel. I like it more than the other one. So I think we'll stick with this for next time. Thanks, everyone, for coming, and see you next week.